Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back to another episode of Cut the Shit Fit. I am your lovely host, Rafal Matuszewski, and joining me today for the first time is Misty. She's in the back if you can't see her. So if you're listening to this, I have my dog in my car because I'm going to take her to the park and, let her run around, do her thing. So she's going to be popping in and out of the camera a lot like this right now. And another heads up, I have a feeling that my phone is going to pop out of its stabilizer or tripod thing because it recently broke kind of, and it slides out of the holder. So if halfway through my video you see, well, there she is. If you see it fall, I apologize. But what I want to talk about today is a continuation of my low back pain talk I did a couple weeks back. Yeah. And I have a feeling that I might have not posted it. So regardless, this is part 2. Before I get started, what I want to bring up is a shout out to a country and a city that I can't pronounce, and I totally forgot, that's never been on my top 3 before, and it's the country of Saudi Arabia. Like, the other day I was looking at my stats and I was like, whoa, like, this is the first time the country of Saudi Arabia has ever been on my show. Like, this is so cool. Like, being international to that point is pretty amazing. So shout out to everyone in Saudi Arabia listening to my show. That is so cool to think that this little Polish immigrant Canadian is reaching as far as Saudi Arabia. Anyway, if I can remember correctly, the points that I brought up in my last talk was what to do kind of acutely for we have a low back flare-up. So if you haven't listened to that show just yet, that episode, highly recommend it. So now let's get into, like, kind of, I call this phase 2. Phase 1 was we need to calm down the nervous system. We need to figure out if you're flexion intolerant, extension intolerant, whatever it may be. And say you've got some treatment done, you're starting to feel a little bit better. This is where I started getting people in spine sparing exercises. One in particular is learning how to hinge at the hips. So say you're an experienced lifter and you got your low back flared up. Right away, what I want to see is regrooving the pattern of utilizing the hips. Right? A lot of times when we get into low back pain, our bodies want to kind of avoid those positions. So literally a lot of times I'll get people in the clinic to, like, deadlift with a 35-pound dumbbell or kettlebell to reinforce that, hey, hamstrings and glutes need to turn on to pick shit up. Because we all know that when we get home after treatment, we're probably going to do something stupid like bend over into flexion if you're flexion intolerant to pick up your sock, your kid, whatever. So if we can re-pattern the groove of using your hips as a hinge, it's going to save you a lot of trouble. Now, the other 2 spine sparing exercises I get every single person to do, and even if you've never injured your lower back, I still go over these 2 for my patients and clients, because a lot of times when people don't know how to create core stability, they end up doing, tweaks in, oh, hey, Misty, some tweaks in their low back, QL, whatever it may be. So the 2 exercises, the bird dog and dead bug. So I'm going to start with the dead bug first. And it can be as simple as, in this first episode, we were talking about belly breathing. Learning how to diaphragmically breathe is going to be the first kind of step towards building core stability and learning how to engage your core without overly bracing. So if you think of the mechanism of, doing a diaphragmic breath, the moment I get a patient to breathe in through their diaphragm and learn how to utilize that position with their torso and their cage or your core, whatever you want to call it, the thing that I noticed right away is teaching how to teach people how to not rib flare. So the moment you take a big, do you have to breathe so loud, Misty? Jeez. The moment you take a deep breath in through your diaphragm and then exhale, you'll notice that your rib cage actually flattens pretty naturally. And then I cue people that the moment that happens, try to keep that as your new normal. And this goes back to Yonda, who's a physiotherapist way beyond his time, came up with this concept of joint centration. So an example of that is, imagine if I told you to go to your gym and pick up a 100-pound dumbbell. You would be like, oh shit, 100 pounds, that's going to be super heavy, so I'm going to make sure I brace for it. What happens when you set up, just a 100-pound dumbbell off the dumbbell rack? Think about what your body's going to do. You're going to think, okay, I'm going to have a good flat back. I'm going to... Misty, can you not be in my face while I'm doing my podcast? She's literally right in my face and panting into my face. And it's starting to heat up the car. Anyway, think about what your body would have to do in order to properly brace. Your shoulders set back, your hips get in line, you're squeezing the dumbbell handle hard. All these things line up into alignment, and that's the concept of joint centration. Now imagine if you didn't do that and tried to pick up the 100-pound dumbbell, something's going to pull, yank, and not feel good, right? So this whole idea of joint centration can also go back to how you're breathing. Now imagine every single exercise, if you weren't properly breathing, there's no way for you to centrate your body to give you the best leverage angles to lift the weight or put it down or push it over your head. So that being said, the first step to proper mechanics and alignment of your body comes down from the breath. So the moment I can get someone to learn how to keep their ribs in a neutral position and a downward position where it's setting even your spine in a neutral position to lift weight is a good thing. So then I reinforce into the body that every single time you do an exercise, lift something heavy, you're going to be in a joint centrated position. Now, say my example in that first episode, we're just learning how to diaphragmically breathe. We now go into a dead bug progression. So a regular dead bug is you're lying on your back, legs bent at 90, arms towards the ceiling, and then you take, say, your left leg and right arm, you extend it out straight and back in. How I coach this dead bug is, one, in that position, taking that big diaphragmic breath, holding it, then extend opposite arm and opposite leg, and then exhale hard, bring those two limbs together. That is a proper dead bug. The other thing I'd start coaching is that with the leg extended, I want them to kick with their heel, extend with their heel, extend with that hip to really elongate the body, and then that opposite arm reaching far, far, far back as possible, and then creating a fist for maximal tension, and then exhaling hard. That's a good dead bug. And what that teaches your body is to how to stabilize in positions that require a lot of core stability. Now, because you're lying on your back, you have no spinal loading compared to if you were going to do a barbell back squat, that requires some sort of loading into your spine, and you need to be able to brace to hold that. So by doing a dead bug, it's a low entry level core stability building exercise that reinforces the body to constantly engage when it's asked for spinal stability. So by doing this dead bug in your warm-ups, in your program, in your daily movement routine that everyone should be doing that no one does, will help speed up the process to feel better. Like, I've seen patients in the clinic that are in chronic low back pain, and then the exercises I give them that we've already spoken about so far, that actually do them on a daily basis, the next time I see them, like the week after, 2 weeks after, their healing time is so quick compared to a patient that doesn't do shit at home and just goes back to their desk job and then comes back the next week and they're like, honestly, my back hasn't got any better, right? That's the other thing too. A lot of times when people go to chiro and physio and had a bad experience, sure, there are some shitty practitioners out there, but most of the time those practitioners give you homework to do, and a lot of times patients don't do that homework, right? Like, we're fortunate to have a system where Dr. Forster, the chiropractor I work, treats you first and then comes to me for the active rehab. So at least you're doing the exercise right there and then. Some practitioners don't have that luxury in their practice because of the way they set it up before, or they work in a clinic where that's frowned upon or whatever it is. So a lot of times, if people actually just did their homework, they would improve so freaking much. And if you look at the research on exercise, like, minimal amount of effort gives you benefit. Like, I remember reading research articles when I first started in the industry that, you know, they took a group of people that did literally 3 exercises, 10 reps each, and they had health benefits from it. Like, it's crazy. So even if you're like a fitness enthusiast, that all these rehab exercises you're getting from your chiro and physio are bullshit, like, actually try it. Like, trust the process. So going back to the dead bug, one of the best ways to do it. So now let's break it down. Now imagine if you started doing that exact sequence that I just said about the dead bug, and your low back is still hurting. There's a couple things you can do here. One, if you look at the laws of biomechanics and exercise, if you shorten your lever, it makes an exercise easier. So an example of that, and it's usually the legs, because again, think about the musculature around your legs compared to your arms, is far greater. So if we shorten up the lever of your legs, it might make the exercise not cause and trigger a pain response. So imagine, rather than extending the leg straight out, you keep it bent at 90 degrees and then you slowly tap the heel down and back up. That changes a lot of things for people. You're probably cutting at least, 40% of the weight that's required for your core to turn on and stabilize. If that doesn't even work, something as simple as closing off where your hip angle is. So a lot of times, if you look at your spine, if you lay down on your back, where your lumbar spine, there's a little curve, and there's always a little space in between your low back and the floor. So maybe all you have to do is actually just tilt your pelvis into the floor, and not like jam it in there, but just actively tilt it and hold it there, and then try extending your leg in and out. That changes hip angle. Now, why would that make a difference? If you think, for the general population, we sit all the fucking time. All the time. So how can we change exercise to help prevent any kind of, issue that relies on sitting too much? So if you think about most of us who sit in a hip flexed position, those hip flexors at the front of your hip are going to be super jammed up and just like rocks, right? So imagine when you're extending your leg in a dead bug and you get into extension, and if your stuff in the front of your hip is tight, you'll get to your end range, and what's going to happen for you to straighten out your leg and have your heel tap the ground? your lumbar spine has to tilt in that arch position to get you to tap your heel to the ground. No wonder your low back's going to be pissed off. So sometimes what I do is I cue keeping your low back kind of pushed into the ground, and then when you extend, rather than having your heel tap the ground, you just like kick towards the kind of like air or the wall rather than tapping it down. So now you close your angle where your hip is required to cheat by using the lumbar spine. So that being said, dead bugs, so freaking important to create spinal stability. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is progressing the dead bug as well. There are so many variations of the dead bug to continually challenge the individual client and yourself, and like it's endless, right? So if you go on my Facebook or my YouTube page, there's so many different variations of the dead bug that I filmed that you can use. So even if you're not dealing with a low back injury, but you want to challenge your core stability with a low barrier of entry of spinal loading, like that's where you should be. That should be your bread and butter. So if you even look at my own programming for my clients and for myself, there's so many dead bugs and bird dogs. And even if you're the fittest person I've ever met, I can find a variation that will fuck you up for sure. Right, Misty? She's literally in my face. Hang on. So moving on, what I want to talk about is the bird dog. But honestly, I feel like so that's going to end it because I'm almost at my destination, the dog park. And I think I will bring up kind of like a part 3 for next time, because I can talk forever about bird dogs and its variations. So, thank you for listening to me ramble. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for listening. Share this podcast with your friends and family. You guys are amazing. Like, words cannot describe how grateful I am to have my listeners listen to me talk about fitness and health. Like, you guys are awesome. Thank you. Until next time, you guys.